Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what's happening, y'all? Man, it's been a little while. Haven't been behind the camera in who knows how long. Man, like I'm thinking, it's really been a long, long time. But man, it is good to be back behind the camera. Welcome to the Let's Talk podcast hosted by your own guy, the Frederick Bompuku. Man, I'm excited to be back on the pod. Um, where have I been? Honestly, it's been like I think a month and a half. It's been a little while. Haven't done this in a while, but like I said, just really been chilling, working. There's some new life stuff been going on. That'll be coming soon. I won't talk about that quite yet, but yeah, I'm excited to get back on the pod today. So let's talk. What we talking about today? So today I want to tell another story. We're talking about the drums and my story with the instrument. You know how I came and some perseverance and some advice. You know, some of the advice is made for musicians, but I feel like the advice I'm gonna give is also some life advice that a lot of people can take. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, how I got started on the drums, let's think. I've been now playing at least since eighth grade. I think no, eighth grade. Eighth grade is when I kind of got my start. So, in episode 1, I was telling my story about how my dad went to Afghanistan, and when he got back, one of the Christmas presents that I got was a drum set, and so that was really awesome to get. I had always wanted to be a drummer since I was a kid, you know, growing up in church. You know, you watch those like church videos and you see those kids like just standing by the drum cage or by the drummers. I was one of those kids, you know, wanted to play drums when I was in band back in like 5th or 6th grade. One of the instruments I wanted to play was percussion. Unfortunately, I didn't get picked for percussion. I played trombone in middle school and a little bit of middle school. But yeah, drums has just always been an instrument I wanted to play, never played it. And so I started learning again, like when I got back from, not when my dad got back from Afghanistan. And so I started working. He had had found these videos with some basic drum beats, and we started practicing those. And that's just kind of how it started. Really wasn't playing anywhere or anything like that. I started kind of freshman year is kind of when I got like my break and, you know, joined the worship team. I had actually first joined the worship team just as like a member of the media team. But I was also a drummer, so I started going to rehearsals with my dad because he was going and they were practicing. And so I started doing media, doing like the lyrics and stuff. And then, you know, after that again, joined the worship team, but I was actually the third drummer. So I was already off the rip, you know, third stringer. We had my guy Ernest, you know, he's one of my guys, a big brother to me. He was drummer number 1. He at the time was just getting ready to graduate high school and then go into OU, but he was still playing around that time. I was a freshman. So yeah, I think he was a senior in high school around that time. And then my guy, Uncle Milas, I call him Uncle Milas, you know, he's like a dad figure. He was the second drummer, but he also played from time to time. He would get to play a little bit. He was also a bass player, so he would swap between drums and bass. And then there was me, the third guy, and I really, at first, never really played. I would go to practice. I'd practice with my guy at the time, our music director. His name was David Collins. Dude's a crazy musician. He could play bass, keys, drums. I think he could play a little bit of electric guitar. And so I was working with him on drum stuff, and you know we were working, chopping it up, getting practice in. And then in rehearsals, sometimes I would get to play certain songs. I could play like 1 or 2 songs, and then whoever was playing that week would play. And then so Ernest went to college. He left. So then it was me and Uncle Milas. And I thought from there, I thought I was going to move up, get to play a little bit more. But I really didn't. And so they started implementing more, but I would only get to play during our offering time. And so during giving, we have usually a song. And so that was my chance to play. So I'd practice, that song, get to play. Uncle Milas at the time was now the main drummer, and I was number two. And so Uncle Milas was playing every Sunday, and I would just come in, every once in a while, play offering. And then I can remember the first instance we, as a church, got invited to play for another church. There was a service happening, and we got invited. And so I show up for sound check for our sound check at the church, because we were going to practice before we head to the church. And so I show up, and I get to play all the songs. So I practice. But at the time, our assistant pastor, who was also one of our worship pastors, Pastor Wonder, he had a talk with David, and Pastor Wonder said I wasn't ready. And funny thing about that, so that made my dad very upset. My dad's probably going to see this, and I don't know if he remembers this at all, but he was upset because he was like, man, I drove this guy here, and he's not even playing. What can we do? Like, we have to find a way for him. And so David and Pastor Wonder talked, and they agreed that I get to play one song. But before that, man, when I found out that Pastor Wonder said I wasn't ready, I was distraught. I was like, what? Like, I'm not ready? And I was hurt. But then I did eventually get to play, one song. And then another instance, we get invited to another church. Kind of same thing happens. We get there. I get to practice all the songs. We're working through it. Again, Pastor Wonder says he's not ready. And this time, I don't get to play at all. No songs. And like, I'm hurt. I get in the car. We're getting ready to leave to head to the other church, and I'm bawling my eyes out in the car. Don't get to play again. Hurt. Like some hurt. I can even name other times where at rehearsal, I do the full set to get told, you got one song, you got offering. Man, I remember one Sunday, I'm like outside. It's me, my dad, and David, our music director. And like, I'm angry. I'm like, are you serious? I went through the whole rehearsal, and you're going to tell me I'm playing one song? Like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I'm hot. And, one of the things that, David told me that time, he's like, don't worry. Like, David was able to calm me down. My dad was able to calm me down, and I was fine. But they assured me, like, your time will come. Don't worry. Like, your time will come. And my time did come. Eventually, I think there was one Sunday where David at the time, he was a college student at Oral Roberts University. So I think he had went home, and Uncle Milas couldn't play drums, and Ernest wasn't there because Ernest was also coming back for the summer. But that week, Ernest was out, and I got my Sunday to play. And it was kind of late notice too, because it was also a lot of pressure. So usually we would rehearse Saturday evenings at that time. And we had to come in and do rehearsal Sunday morning about 9 a.m. And I'm stressing because I really didn't get to practice. So we get there, and everybody's just like at me, do this, do that, do this. And I'm like stressing out. Like, I'm like, bruh, everybody just stop. Like, leave me alone. And it ended up being okay. I was nervous. So I played one of the songs I didn't end up playing. My dad played for me. But everything else, they just told me to, play the basic grooves and whatnot. It ended up being good. So I got to play that Sunday, the full Sunday. And it, like I said, it was very scary. I don't know when that was. Honestly, it was like 2015, 2016. I have to go back to our church page and go look for it. Maybe I might throw a clip in there in the video. We'll see. Probably not. But if I do find it, we might insert it. And so we go back to that. And then we go back. Ernest is back. Uncle Milas is back. I'm back to the offering guy again. And I think during that time, it was honestly really hard for me as a musician because, when I did get my chances to play, I would just play just to play, because it was my offering song, and boom, that was it. I really wasn't. I kind of felt like the bench warmer, the guys who come in at the last minute. That's just kind of how it felt because I didn't get no PT. I didn't get the playing time I wanted. And then eventually I did. I started to get playing time. You know, Uncle Milas was starting to play bass a lot more because at the time, our bass player, his name is Dr. Eugene Quay. He was working to become a doctor at that time, and so he wasn't really playing as much. So Uncle Miles was playing a little bit of bass. David was playing keys. I think Ernest during that time was still at school, and so actually no, Dr. Quay was on and off on Sundays, but he would consistently play bass, and so I got to play drums a little bit more. But I remember one Sunday, or I think no, it was a Saturday, and I'm talking with David, and David's like, "Bro, you play too serious. You need to loosen up. Like, you need to have fun." And that's where like my piece of advice is going to come in here. So for my musicians, listen up, man. One of the biggest things I kind of have a problem with musicians and with people in general with life is we don't take criticism and good feedback well, especially young musicians. Listen, y'all youngins, any young musicians that are watching this or just people in general, listen, we got to be able to take feedback and criticism well. Because when I tell you that piece of advice that David gave me, like, bro, you need to loosen up. Like, you're not having fun. You look stiff. That really made a way for me and broke a way for me to become a better drummer because I started to have more fun. I started to put a smile on my face when I played and not playing stiff, not just playing to play, but actually playing because I had joy in my heart and I was playing for the, for the joy of the Lord. And that's just a piece of advice in general. Like, people, we need to start doing things with joy. Like, enjoy what you do. Whether, man, even if it's like you hate your job, find something that you can do with joy in your job. Like, find something that gives you joy. Whether it's talking with your coworkers, find that teammate or, just whatever. We do things like with sadness or we're not happy about it. And that's just not good. And it affects your attitude can affect your team. If I'm not enjoying and not playing well and I'm just going up there and playing like I don't care, that can have an effect on the rest of the team. Because me as the drummer, I control the groove, I control the beat. Or if I come in there and I'm like, man, I'm going to just do what I want. I'm going to just play how I want. I don't care about the rest of the band. That's not fun. But man, when I change my mindset, like, okay, I'm going to lighten up a little bit. I'm going to have fun because, like, truly playing the drums for me, since I've started, it's just been so fun. And, like, the drums have really carried me, in a long way. And I thank God for the drums because they've, helped me through tough times. When I was living back at home in Broken Arrow, I would, sometimes be at the church. I had my church's keys, and I would just pop into the church and go play drums. Sometimes I'd start maybe 5, 6 o'clock. I'd be there 10, 11 o'clock, just practicing away, just enjoying myself. And, even Sunday services, as I got, more experience and more playing time, I'd have a lot more fun. And now there's a joy anytime I get the chance to play drums. And so, again, whether you're a musician or whether you're just a listener just listening to this, man, we got to do our things with joy. Whether that's your job, your sport, your hobby, do things with joy. We're called to do things with joy. You shouldn't do something or be doing something and not having a smile on your face or not being happy that you're doing something. Because for me as a drummer, me having joy could be that breakthrough that somebody needs. Somebody sees me being joyful and, having a smile and being happy. That could be that motivation for that person. Think about that. the thing that you do, if people see that you have joy in your life and you're doing things with joy, that could be that push for that person. Like, man, look at that person. They're so happy. Why can't I be like that? I need to turn something around. And the next piece of advice is, man, in the waiting season, we got to be patient, y'all. You know, I could have quit drums because I wasn't getting playing time or left the praise team. Like, man, let me find other things to do, because I was, doing media as well on the side, and I had fun, and I could have just been like, man, let me just do full-time media and focus on this. But man, I stuck at it. And shout out to David Collins, man. He's a big inspiration to me. David, if you're watching this, man, shout out to you. I thank God for you. But man, that piece of advice that he gave me, be patient. Your time will come. Your time will come, people. To the listeners who are listening to this, remember, your time will come. Sometimes we have to wait for that thing. It wasn't meant for me to start playing drums right away and be able to get playing time. I had to grow. That's the thing. Sometimes we think that we can start something and it's just going to blossom, or we're just going to be the top guy. But man, if you look at, for example, there's some rookies. Let's talk about the NBA. There's some second round players. Some of those guys, they're not going to get playing time right away. They got to work their butt off. Some of them, they get sent to the G League, and they got to work for that. But at the end of the day, you look at guys like Draymond Green. As much as I can't stand the dude, but he worked hard. He put the work in. And look at where he's at now. He's a starter. He's doing all these things. But his time had to come. I think he played in the G League. He might have not. But he had to start somewhere, not getting much minutes. But he had to show and work hard. And now look at him. He's a multiple-time NBA champion. He's a defensive player of the year. He's done all these things because of waiting. You got to also put that work in on the side. While you're in that waiting season, put that work in. Like I said, I worked with David. We would work hard. He helped me through a lot of things, my drumming, working on things like dynamics. One of the biggest things he gave me was pocket. If you're just a listener, you're like, what in the world did he just say? What is pocket? So pocket is the ability to stay in a groove, not doing too much in a song. And, David helped me to develop a little bit of that pocket. And even, Pastor Wonder, telling David he's not ready. That was big for me because it humbled me. Because I could have been like, man, I'm out. I'm done with this. They don't feel like I'm ready. Why am I here? I'm not going to get playing time. I'm done. But like hearing that from, higher leadership, he's not ready. It's humbling because it teaches you like your time will come. And like sometimes people are going to tell you you're not ready, but it's okay. Your time will come. And that's just in life. If you're, watching this and you're like waiting for a relationship, you see your friends and whatnot and people around you are in relationships, your time will come. You may not be ready. Sometimes we're not ready and we feel like we're ready, but then we enter something and we just rush it. But sometimes you just got to let things work and you got to practice and you got to keep working, keep pushing for that thing to be ready. And going back to, like I said, be able to take feedback and criticism. I mean, I'm talking good criticism because some people, they just are mean. Like, I'm talking about good, constructive criticism and good feedback. Be able to take that. Be humble and take it. Because I could have been that drummer who's like, man, I'm going to just forget what these people are telling me and I'm going to do my own thing. What would that have done for me? That wouldn't have done anything. Because I just would have been that drummer who, thinks he's that guy who, does this and does that and, trying to do my own thing and church services and whatnot. Like I'm that dude. But that wouldn't have done anything. But hearing things like, hey, you need to bring it back. You need to die down a little bit. Build that pocket. Stop doing all the fills. This is not music terms. But all this stuff, it helped me to become who I am as a drummer. And so that goes with life too. Be able to take criticism. Hey, so and so, this and that. It helps. It makes you humble too, because it helps you like reflect, like, okay, what this person's saying, they're right. I need to work on that. And like for me, that was important, hearing that, feedback and criticism, because now, eventually, I did start to get the playing time. And, Ernest graduated college and he moved to Norman. And eventually David, he moved back to New Jersey, and our bass player, Dr. Quay, he moved over to keys, and Uncle Milas, stepped to bass, and I became the drummer. I became the main guy. And, that's just a testament of God. It took time, but, here we are, 10 plus years later, and man, like I said, I enjoy playing drums. And it's really, truly one of the most funnest instruments I could ever play. And I'm so grateful for it. And so, in recap, like I said, biggest pieces of advice I'd give a young, inspiring musician is, wait your turn. Wait your turn. Your time will come. Practice, 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 practice. I can't emphasize that enough. And just be able to take criticism. Like I said, this isn't just for musicians, but this is part of life. I feel like these tips, they relate well, not just for musicians, but for everyone. So that's my story about playing the drums. I'm really, like I said, I'm grateful to God for this instrument, because, man, I've come a long, long way. And I don't know, I look forward to the next journey. A lot of things, have come up now. I've been able to do things that I never thought I would do. I'm able to, mix drums okay with, help from, presets and setting things up. I want to be able to one day, track my own drums for songs, have, end credits of a song, I played the drum part, God willing. And so I'm going to keep working hard for that. And so, like I said, I'm truly humbled by the people. Shout out again, David Collins, Pastor Wonder, Dr. Eugene Quay, Uncle Milas, my dad, because my dad, even for, there was Sundays or Saturdays, I'd have to find a ride to rehearsal, but he was taking me to rehearsal every Saturday for me just to practice one song, and he did it for me. And so, kudos to my dad for being able to take me to rehearsals, even for practicing for one song. And we would sit through the full practice, because at that time we had evening practices before we transitioned to afternoon, which that was awesome. Great transition. Praise God. Hallelujah. But man, like I said, just specifically to those people, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Because again, you guys helped shape my journey as a drummer. And man, now my hope is to inspire young musicians and young drummers to eventually get to their goals of wanting to get to wherever they want to get to. And so, yeah, if you know any young drummers or young musicians that need to hear this video or hear my story, send it out to them. Share this video. But I'm hoping to get back on the pod, get more episodes in. I really want to be consistent with this. And so, yeah, leave a comment if you enjoy this or have any questions about the journey. I got some great episodes. We're going to be talking in a couple episodes, about the NBA playoffs. NBA playoffs, we're almost through conference finals. And so we're going to preview Game 7 of the Thunder a little bit later in another episode. And then, talk the rest of the playoffs. But, man, what a great episode. It's been great talking with you guys again. Subscribe to this video, and I look forward to seeing y'all soon. So until then, it's been your boy again, loving doing this with y'all, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace.